The floor is now open for questions from the audience.
Excuse me. Is it on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So thank you very much for the panel. Very, very interesting. Thank you for putting on display this morning what I consider to be both streams of international diplomacy and international relations. Coincidentally, to the right of the podium, the School of Realpolitik, the School of Metternich and Henry Kissinger. To the left, coincidentally, the School of Wishful Thinking, School of Jimmy Carter and Woodrow Wilson and others. And now I'll come to my question. Isn't it true that the main reason that the convulsions happening in the Islamic world, including Turkey, including all around us, is the fact that Islam, unlike Christianity, unlike Judaism, has not undergone reformation? Look at Christianity. Renaissance started after Martin Luther, and the developments in art, in culture, in political thinking, in sciences started after Christian Reformation. Look at Judaism. Isn't it true that after Moses Mendelssohn in Germany started the reformist movement, and as a result of that, 40% of all the Nobel Prize winners in medicine, physics, chemistry, etc., are all Jews, because we started focusing on the world outside religion. It seems to me that these convulsions within Islam are going to continue, whether we like it or not. And some people advocate that we should not stand aside and we should get involved in that. Is that a realistic assumption to make? I mean, to what extent can we influence the reformation that is a requirement of Islam to move forward? Until this happens, they will keep blaming the West for their backwardness.
Okay, so thank you for your question.
Thanks. I have perhaps one remark and one question. The remark is to Gareth. There was an interview. About a month ago by Rhetoric in CNN Turk. And it was there for only 24 hours. Those who read it, those who didn't. And in this interview, he said exactly what you're claiming he had said in that book in Malaysia. He basically said that that we are bringing back the Ottoman Empire. He actually said that. And he said we're even better than the Ottoman Empire because we reach farther. We go into Africa. We go into East Asia. So in that sense, I think he sort of overplayed his hand, and then it was pulled out of the press, and it's very interesting. And nobody ever mentioned this afterwards. Now I'd like to take issue with the question of Islam. There is an assumption here that there is no Turkish Islam, that there is no theology in Turkish Islam, but that assumes that there is a theology in the other parts of the Islamic world. And I would like to contend that in all of the Sunni Islamic world, unlike the Shia Islamic world, there is no serious theological basis. Even the things we know about, Hassan al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb, these people who are supposed to be theologians, first of all, they're not ulama. They're not people of the religious professions. And also, their ideas are not strictly religious. They're much more about ethics and society than about the deep interpretation of religious. There is Hassan al-Qaradawi, but he's a rare figure, and I don't think he's adhered to by most. So just as there is no Turkish Islam, there is no other kind of Sunni Islam in the world. That's what I would contend. And if we're looking at Turkey, we do see, and I agree with Anat here, we do see the rise of a strain of Islam that emphasizes ethics, that emphasizes a conservative relation to the family, stuff like this, which is not Islamic proper, this is not religion, it's just a conservative view of life. And in that sense, it's very close to what's happening in other areas of the Arab world and other Islamic areas.
Thank you. Let's take two more.
Hi, thank you. One of the things that all three of you were talking about was essentially the establishment of some kind of new or at least replacement of Kemalist identity as it pertains both to on an ethnic level and also on a religious level. So one of, I guess, two of the categories that you didn't really talk about all that much was essentially how the AKP, or perhaps how this new form of Turkish Islam tries to address the heterogeneity of Turkish society, in particular on the ethnic level regarding the Kurds, but also on the religious level regarding the Alevi population.
Galia, there are some questions.
Yeah, two questions to Anat. You mentioned the ethical point of view and human, missions. But if you read, for example, Saddam Hussein back in the 80s and 90s, he talked in the same vein exactly. He's bringing humanity and solving human problems. I don't know if this is the authoritarian way to speak about the human thing and the ethical things, but there's nothing unique about Turkey in this sense. And to you, Alon, you draw a very rosy picture of Egyptian and Turkish relationship. Can I remind you of the rosy picture of the Turkish-Syrian relationship? I mean, of course, Egypt is winning a certain thing, but what is the gain of Turkey? If you try to find out what did Turkey gain from the shifting alliances, can you give me anything that really Turkey won in these shifting alliances? Thank you.
Good morning. It is a pointed question to Mr. Liel as a practitioner in one of the bottom lines, very related to the Turkish foreign policy and obvious Israeli interest. So the pointed question will be, to sum up some of your parts of referring to Turkish foreign policy, hoping that in spite of the vested Turkish interest in the Muslim and Arab world, that we didn't cross the point of no return in the Turkish-Israeli relation. Is there anything at all that we can do together or in a concerted parallel on the Syrian issue?
Let's take one last question. Then allow.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Good morning. This is Turin Dadolu. My question is going to go to Alon Liel. You said that, hopefully if there becomes an apology to Turkey, maybe the Turkish ambassador may come back to Tel Aviv again. We hope that it happens. But don't you think that from the Turkish Prime Minister point of view, it's the really issue is not about apology, but the Middle East peace process and the settlements and everything that goes much deeper to that. So if these conditions are not met, why do you, think that there will be a normalization and that there will be a Turkish ambassador here? Thank you.
Okay, let's allow. Oh, okay. Last.
Can I have one?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins, in your opening remarks, you said you were going to deal with the influence of Islam on Turkish foreign relations. I think because of lack of time, you didn't. So, if you please.
So let's allow our speakers to answer. Alon.
Okay. Before I answer the questions directed to me, I want only 3 short comments about what the 2 other speakers said. First of all, one comment about the Gulen movement. I think a lot of the achievements of Erdogan he owes to the Gulen movement. What happened in education, what happened in the society, and also what's happening in the economy is a result of, or partially a result of the huge success of Fethullah Gulen inside Turkey and outside Turkey. When we speak on an empire, we have to remember that there are 500 schools outside, 200 of them very successful schools in the United States, Turkish very successful schools. So it's not, I don't know if to describe it as a theologic activity, but definitely the Fethullah Gulen movement is a very, very interesting phenomena, very, very helpful to Erdogan, and I think very, very positive in the Turkish society. About one comment that said that civilian kind of authority or civilian dictatorship replacing military dictatorship, I want to tell you that I have also some South African experience. I was the ambassador to South Africa, and people say now that black apartheid is replacing a white apartheid. I still prefer the black apartheid to a white apartheid regarding what's happening on the ground. So I prefer this civilian so-called dictatorship to the military one. And I want to remind you, you lived in Turkey and I lived in Turkey. If we would have said when we were living there 10 years ago that Turkey is a military dictatorship, they would expel me as an ambassador and they would arrest you. In the Turkish tradition, you couldn't, by law, say anything against the army and anything against Ataturk. Now, Erdogan adopted this tradition that I see as a ridiculous tradition. And he demands that nothing will be said against him, kind of the new regime in Turkey. I think it's a terrible mistake of his, but this is how Turkey was run since Ataturk founded it. You couldn't say a word against the army and a word against Ataturk. After he died also. So about one comment about Morsi before I answer the questions, and it can deal with your question, Ofra. As far as I understand, first of all, what happened during the visit and was said by the Muslim brothers was before Morsi came to power. As far as I understand, it's a little early, but my judgment is that Morsi sees the Turkish model as a model for Egypt. I think he wouldn't go, we wouldn't visit the convention of the AKP. He was one of the few heads of states that visited the convention and spoke in the convention of the AKP. Although he's a head of state, he could have an official visit to Turkey. He preferred to go to the AKP convention. And I think he sees this model of Islam and modernization, and Islam and democracy, although it's not a Western democracy, it's a Middle Eastern democracy. And definitely this model is not an example to the world and is not intended to be an example to the world. It is intended to be an example to the Middle East. And it is an example to the Middle East. Okay, now I want to go to questions directed to me about all this issue of Demo Islam, if it's a revolution or is it sidelining Kemalism. I think we didn't see riots in the Turkish streets in the last 2 years because Erdogan is the Turkish Spring, was the Turkish Spring. Erdogan was the revolution. So there was no point to have another revolution. Erdogan is seen as the change in Turkey. We didn't see even not the seculars going to the street or not anyone else going to the street during 2011. I want to say a few things about Assad, Syria, I said this is one of his biggest mistakes. But relations between Turkey and Assad collapsed because of the Arab Spring. Assad was the old regimes, and Morsi is the new regime, not the old regime. You cannot compare Morsi to Mubarak. I mean, you cannot compare the elections that Morsi was elected to the elections that Mubarak was elected to. So we are speaking on a new Egypt and a new Turkey. And it's still the old Syria. And soon we'll have, I guess, I don't know if it will, I really don't know if Syria will exist in a year or two. But if the rebels will manage to take control, we might see also a new Syria. It's not around. But there is a new Turkey and there is a new Egypt. And Turkey always needed a strategic partner in the region. In the 90s, we were the strategic partner. Then they gambled on Syria as a huge mistake. But now I think they are gambling on Egypt, and I think Egypt is gambling on Turkey. And you know, it's we always tend to say the Arabs hate Turkey, the Turks hate the Arabs, Egypt and Turkey are rival states. Just I beg you all, look at the figures, look at what is happening in the economic link between the two countries, look at what is happening in the military link between these two countries, look at what's happening between the Morsi's party and Erdogan's party, look what's happening between Morsi and Erdogan personally, and including in the next 3 days the type of visit that he will have there. So they're building an alliance, I don't know for how long. My feeling is that because it's a new Egypt, because he's working with a new mandate, a different mandate that previous leaderships had in Egypt, this might work. About us, yeah. I'm coming only to the questions directed to us on what can we do on Syria and what if the apology can help. First of all, on Syria, Israel can do nothing. Really, really nothing. I think we did the right thing of staying away from it. We are so isolated, and I would even say hated, in the Middle East, that if we say a good word about somebody, he is losing immediately. And if we can't help the rebels, we can't help Assad, and maybe we could do things on the humanitarian level, but I don't think we would get any cooperation from the other side, from the Syrian side. So I think we can do nothing today with the Turks on the Syrian issue. The apology, the issue of the apology. Of course, most of the problem between us and Turkey stems from what's going on between us and the Arab world, between us and the Palestinians. I know that the common wisdom is the guy is an Islamist, he's crazy, he's a lost case, he's an anti-Semite. I think most of the problem is that we do not really have a meaningful process with the Palestinians in the last 4 years. I also don't see such a process in the horizon. So the question is, why should we apologize? In any case, the guy will not become a friend of us until this is true. This is true. He will not renew or resume or even normalize the relations with Israel as long as we don't have a breakthrough with the Palestinians. The question is if we can have something better than what we have today. Today, we don't have anything going on between the two governments on the political level. We have the economics, but you don't see the Turkish second secretary here in the room. Yeah? Really? He's not here. He's not going to Jerusalem. He's not meeting our people, our diplomats. And he's not inviting our diplomats to the Turkish National Day. He's not inviting at all Israelis to the Turkish National Day, which are it's completely frozen, and we can have the Turkish ambassador here, and I know it because this was the agreement that we signed a year ago. A year ago, or maybe it's a year and a half already, Yossi Chehanover and Osdem Sandberg signed an agreement that spoke on a technical apology, and there were two things that Turkey had to do: send ambassador back and allow us to send ambassador, and resume the strategic dialogue. I don't say this strategic dialogue will bring us a long way as long as we don't have a breakthrough with the Palestinians, but at least we can have a minimal level of coordination. We don't, even as far as I know, not only on the level of ministers, even on the level of officials, we have nothing going on. So,
It wasn't signed, it was agreed upon, but it was not signed.
the what? Both officials involved or ex-officials say it was an agreement between the two. I don't know if it was initialed or not.
And it was not.
If it was initialed or not, if it was only a handshake or it was an agreement that was overruled. So I'm not. I don't think we can.
We just have 10 more minutes.
Yeah, okay. I'm not saying we can bring the relations back to the 90s, but we can still have a better thing. Okay.
Sorry. Gareth, please.
Okay, I shall try to be mercifully brief. On the case of the convulsion in the Islamic world and whether there's a need for a reformation, it's not really for me as a non-Muslim to tell Muslims what they should do with their religion, but I would think there is a case to be argued for the reopening of the gates of interpretation, which were closed in Islamic theology. You can't, of course, change the text of the Quran, but you can change the way in which it's applied. But I think there's a point here that there is a problem at the moment in a lot of Muslim societies coming to terms with modernity and coming to terms with globalization. But as I don't want to lecture Muslims on what they should do with their religion. About Turkish Islamist movement addressing the heterogeneous nature of Turkish society. It's a very good point. It's also a very complex answer, which I can't get through in a couple of minutes. We had a very good presentation yesterday by Ofra on the Kurdish issue. And one element, which there are so many elements, but to add an extra element, there's an organization in the Kurdish part of Turkey called Hezbollah, which is unconnected with the Lebanese organization. They do now have very good relations with Hamas. And they've reinvented themselves really from a violent organization back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And now have a very strong presence on the ground in the Kurdish areas. It's not very often reported, but I went to one of their rallies. They invited me, in fact, one of their rallies earlier this year, and they turned out hundreds of thousands of people. And they're pushing in the Kurdish areas for Islam and Kurdish identity. And you've had also the AK Party trying to push Islam as a counter to Kurdish identity, trying to reinvent, for example, Diyarbakir, the main Kurdish city, as an Islamic city. So they hold conferences on how all of the companions of the Prophet passed through Diyarbakir, etc., to try to take it away from the Kurdish nationalists. But you also have divisions within the Islamist movement. To give just one example of how the AK Party is looking over its shoulder, and it's very famous, something which is of interest to some of you here on a personal level, on the Mavi Marmara incident. As you know, it was organized by the IHH, which is a very radical organization and very close, in fact, to the people now in the Kurdish Hezbollah. And as some of you probably know, when the ship originally belonged to the Istanbul municipality, it was held in dry dock in Istanbul. It was bought by the IHH to take as a flagship of the flotilla to go to Israel. And they were going to send it from Istanbul down to Antalya to pick up the activists Antalya and then go on to Gaza. But when the port authorities looked at it, it had been in dry dock so long there was problems with the stabilization of the vessel. Also, some of the certificates for some of the crew didn't meet international standards. Some of them didn't have any certificates at all. Some of them who were going to have a role in actually guiding the ship were actually certified as cooks. So the port authorities in Istanbul said, we can't allow this ship to sail. They got an order from Ankara, from the AK Party in Ankara, you've got to let it go. The reason, I think, was not because the AK Party wanted to provoke Israel so much, it was frightened of what the IHS would say. Would then turn around and say, look, you're serving Israel. And at that time in Turkish politics, the Saadet Party, which has now disappeared, but at the time it was a threat, seen as a threat to the AK Party, did very well in the local elections in March 2009, a lot more radical than the AK Party. So the AK Party was looking over its shoulder. And I think that's one of the reasons the AK Party acted so precipitously, really, and ordered this ship to go. On the Alevis, this is a major problem. For me, this is one of the litmus tests of the AK Party's real commitment to freedom of religion. I talked to some of my more conservative friends who support the AK Party, and we also get these arguments. Some of the laws that on the statute book, they're introduced by the previous regime. Fair point. AK Party has been in power 10 years, though. It has a time. How long do you need to change the laws? Alevis suffer discrimination, starting with the educational system. And it goes right through everything related to them. So I think this is a real, litmus test for the AK Party's commitment to true freedom of religion. It should be starting with the Alevis, not with freedom of religion just for Sunnis. On Islam and foreign policy, I have almost no time. For me, this is a mixture, as I tried to say, a mixture between Islamic identity, it's a civilizational identity, and then Turkey is leveraging that in order to try, or the AK Party is leveraging that in order to try to assert itself as the leader of the Islamic world. In terms of the AK Party's popularity in the Arab world, it's interesting to see that you have, of course, a lot of soap operas which have been very popular now, Turkish soap operas. God help me, I watched a whole load of them for an article I was having to write. The ones that are very popular, actually very glitzy and not Islamic at all. They're all about shopping and very wealthy lifestyles and that. You now have Arabs coming to Istanbul, particularly hotels like the Marmara Hotel in Taksim Square, for those of you who know Istanbul. You see a lot of Arab tours coming there and going on soap opera tours. And they go around all the places where these soap operas were filmed. And that's one of the attractions, I think, for Turkey in the Arab world. It's the appearance of material prosperity. It's nothing to do with Islam. It's not saying, oh, the Turks have worked out how to live with Islam. They look at Turkey and think, this is rich, look at these wonderful soap operas, they have all this money, that's what we want to be like. And the other one is the leverage of anti-Israeli rhetoric. I don't like to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Anti-Semitism is a problem in Turkey. It's a problem across the political spectrum. It's not just a problem on the conservative right. There are many conservative and very pious Muslims I know who are not anti-Semite. And there are also atheist leftists I know who are. But you have a lot of, I think it acts as almost an accelerator when Turkey criticizes Israel, that you have certain people in the AK Party, I won't name them, but I have some names in my head, who I am convinced are simply anti-Semitic. And of course, that's the other way of making yourself popular, as was said, making yourself popular in the Arab world is to bash Israel. So I think those are the two reasons, really, that AK Party has become, or Turkey has become more popular. It's an economic aspiration and the fact that it bashes Israel. I don't think it's really related to Arabs wanting to say that they're living Islam, that's the way we want to live. Just a very brief comment, and then I'll hand over. On secularists not taking to the streets, no, they're taking to the jails. We had a lot of people who have been put in prison. For every one person that's been put in prison, you've got thousands who are frightened. This is a major, major problem. I have friends of mine who are in prison because of what they've written. I'm a little bit lucky because I'm a foreigner. But just as in the old regime, when the military didn't like what I'd write, I'd get people coming and talking to the doorman of my apartment. I still get people coming talking to the doorman of my apartment, going talking to my corner shop. That intimidation is still there. But the secularists are very, very frightened. That's the reason they're not on the streets. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you. I'll start with Gulen, with the Fethullah Gulen. Indeed, and the soap operas. Indeed, even the Gulen movement, in my opinion, is closer to what someone described as an economic enterprise. And definitely this is one of the more attractive aspects of the Gulen movement, and outside the country as well. The second issue has to do with the democracy. Well, it's a huge question. Do you need to be a believer in democracy or a democrat yourself in order to create democracy? We look at Turkey, well, definitely yes. I mean, what is created there is not a democracy, but let's admit it, democracy was never a value in any of the regimes. It's one of the components that were missing in the Kemalist values, and it's still missing there. It's very unfortunate. Now to the other questions. Empire, Ottoman Empire. Well, I emphasize the empire in this equation, Ottoman Empire. I think that empire turned to be, again, an important theme in the political thought in Turkey. And I think they cannot see themselves anymore as simply a state, just a state, a national state. And of course, Ottomanism and Neo-Ottomanism as a political thought is very attractive for them, but we need to remember that there are two important components to this Neo-Ottomanist belief, and one of them is the anti-colonial approach that was part of the Neo-Ottomanist thought when it started at the beginning of the 20th century, and also it is now an anti-colonial approach, anti-Western, anti-American mainly, but also anti-colonial in general. The second thing is the rejection of the Kemalist assumptions, and I think this is what it is about, and it exists in the heart of the Turkish dream of today. To offer, is there something unique to them? Yes, I think there is. I mean, everyone uses human rights terminology. But what is unique to the Turkish one is that they see in it the source of their legitimacy in the Muslim world. And this is a unique, I think it's a unique argumentation that they are the leaders of the Muslim world. They should be the leaders of the Muslim world, not because they are naturally so, but because they have legitimacy as they were elected in a free elections, and therefore this is what they argue, and therefore this is the only Muslim world where a true democratic election were taken, and therefore they have the legitimacy to lead the Muslim world. This is a very interesting argument, and I think this is unique to them. As for the theology, this is a very challenging question, though. We need to define what theology is. I tend to agree with you about the Sunni world in general, but I think there's something missing here. We need to define what theology is. There's a lot of arguments that our perception of what theology is a very old-fashioned one. I still hold on it, but I think we need to discuss what theology is. Therefore, I'm leaving this discussion aside. I tend to agree with you, though this is not the case in the Shiite world. The question of Reformation, this is even more challenging question. Well, first of all, if I look at what the argumentation in the Turkish arena about this question of Reformation, well, if you ask someone like Davutoglu, he will tell you that the Muslim world didn't need Reformation because they didn't have the problems of the Christian world. That's one thing. If you're asking me, then I have a serious problem with the definition of Islam as religion, and therefore the issue of Reformation is not relevant to me. I'm not trying to avoid the problem that the Muslim world is facing. I just think that Reformation is unique to other religions or other spheres, not necessarily religions, because I'm not sure Judaism is a religion as well. I'm sure Christianity is. But it's a matter of different perspectives.
Am I missing something that I was asked? Not really, but I cannot. Do I have one more minute? Or okay. There is one more thing that I want to say. It has to do with foreign policy. In order to decide whether foreign policy is a success or not, okay, we need to ask ourselves what is the aims of this strategy of foreign policy in Turkey. And I think if we analyze it, then we can very briefly argue that it was based on previous assumptions of previous regimes that Turkey can lead platforms of states in order to achieve its targets. And all the platforms that were created collapsed. So in that sense, the strategy is proven to be a very wrong one. Okay, Turkey has faced problems in all the regions they were trying to create platforms in the Balkan, in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and also in the Middle East. And I don't see any attempts to create a new strategy, to offer new methods, and therefore we can conclude that Turkish foreign policy is constantly in strategic retreat. Thank you very much.
By the way, one comment, I think the goal is spreading the model. So this is what we have, spreading the demo-Islamic model. This is the goal of Turkish foreign policy.
And 3 times you said Islam is not a religion.
Right.
Can you unpack that, please? Because I think it's critical to understanding what else you're trying to say.
Okay. No, I cannot. This is the simple answer. It's complicated. The question is, how can I say that Islam is not a religion? And I see, what do I mean? Yes. The actual question about religion is from, of course, we need to define everything here, and this is something we cannot do, or I cannot do at the moment. So this is why I'm just emphasizing that there is a debate about it, and I agree with the assumption of people like Davutoglu and others, the philosophers, that argue that this division, these questions about religion versus other, meaning secular, has nothing to do with Islam, that Islam is a civilization. Okay? The same arguments about Judaism, by the way. I'm not original in it at all, and I'm not a scholar of Judaism. But there is a very strong debate about it. And in fact, if I'll use the Jewish example, just very briefly, the argument is that when Napoleon came to the Jews and asked, what are you? Are you a nation? Are you a religion? They were completely confused. They didn't know what to answer because these separations and categories were foreign to them, because it's much more than just a religion. And the actual question, the separation, has to do with the Protestant internal debates and the Protestant Catholic debate. And therefore, I think that there is an argument, and it's a very serious argument, that Islam is not a religion, and therefore any attempt to secular Islam is not sustainable. And that's what the Kemalists tried, that's what the Zionists tried. And it's complicated, We need to understand, perhaps to learn Islam, not within the context of religion, but within the concept of civilizations. As I said, I'm not original about it at all. I'm just agreeing with a very serious argumentation that exists today, both in the Jewish scholarship and in the Islamic one.
Thank you. We have a coffee break till 11:30.
Very, very